In this video, I want to talk about our appetite. Why are there so many reasons why we can be hungry? So if we want to lose weight, it's not quite as simple as just eat fewer calories and burn more calories, right? Because what always ends up happening when we try to do that is our appetite will kick in and our brain will make us want to eat. So there are several reasons why our appetite can be increased. The number one reason for being hungry is when our blood sugar goes down. So in between meals or when we're exercising and we're burning more blood sugar, then our hypothalamus, where our hunger center is going to tell us that we need to replace that energy with food. Now, sometimes things can impact the amount that your blood sugar goes up and down. So when you consume sugars or very starchy carbohydrates without fat or protein or fiber, then that will absorb quickly. You will have more blood sugar going into the bloodstream at a time, and then the pancreas will make more insulin. And then that tells the cells to take up that blood sugar, so then the blood sugar can dip back down. So one way we can decrease this is by ensuring that we have some protein, healthy fat, or fiber in our food, then our blood sugar won't go up as much, and decreasing the amount of sweet, sugary foods that we consume. And then the other factor is how much your body can utilize burning fat for energy. So when we have periods of time when we're not eating, we can break down our stored fat in our subcutaneous tissue under our skin, and we can break that down into fatty acids or into ketones. And then our body can use those nutrients or molecules to make energy. Our liver can also convert fats into glucose to keep our blood sugar stable. So the more that your body gets used to burning fat for energy, the more stable you can keep your blood sugar, and then you will be less hungry. Another factor is that your brain has a set point. It likes to have a certain body weight, and that can creep up or creep down based on how you eat and how you exercise. But if, let's say, you weigh 135 pounds and that's what your brain has noted as your stable point for a period of time, and then you decide, you know what, I want to lose 10 pounds. And then you decide to decrease your calories and you start exercising more, right? That change in your energy intake and your energy burning is going to tell the hypothalamus, oh my goodness, we have to eat more food because we need a much higher energy supply. So then you're going to end up being hungrier when you do eat, and your brain is always going to try to make you get back to that set point. So this is why it's really important to lose weight slowly and gradually so your brain doesn't freak out. Okay, so you don't want to lose more than about 1 pound a week if you're trying to lose weight. So there are 3,500 calories in a pound. Think about a block of butter. And if you have a deficit of 500 calories per day, so you can eat 250 calories less and burn 250 calories more over the period of a week, that will equal 1 pound. Your brain won't freak out over that. But if you try to lose 3 to 5 pounds in a couple of days, then your brain is going to make you eat more. And this is why if people lose weight really quickly, they can rebound and end up gaining more weight than they lost. The next reason for having an increased appetite is leptin resistance. Leptin is a hormone that is made by your fat cells. So when you consume food, it's digested, it's absorbed, it goes into your bloodstream, and then extra carbohydrates also get converted into fat, extra protein can get converted into fat, and then obviously your dietary fats. Then all of these will be transported to the cells. Some of your cells will use it immediately to make energy, and then some of your cells, like your adipose tissue, will store that fat for later. So when your fat cells start taking up fat, they will produce this hormone called leptin. Leptin will tell your hypothalamus in your brain that you feel full. So why can't we just take leptin as a drug and feel full all the time? Unfortunately, the brain will adapt. If you eat all the time, you store fat all the time, and then you make leptin all the time, then basically what happens is the brain will decrease those leptin receptors and they will stop responding. And that's why it is called leptin resistance. So how can you deal with this? You want to keep your leptin sensitivity high by not consuming food all the time. This is one reason why grazing or eating all the time can end up being a bad thing if you're making too much leptin all the time. So a little bit of intermittent fasting, having a bit of time without eating, will re-increase your leptin sensitivity. Another thing that I want to mention about leptin is if you have inflammation, like a sort of chronic inflammatory situation, you have cardiovascular disease, you have diabetes, you have leaky gut, irritable bowel syndrome, arthritis, autoimmune conditions, any of those inflammatory situations will also affect the ability of the brain to detect leptin. So this is why obesity and visceral fat, so the fat stored inside your abdominal cavity, which creates inflammatory cytokines, this is why obesity is also correlated with inflammation. It becomes a positive feedback loop. More inflammation makes you decrease your leptin sensitivity, you eat more food, you have more weight gain, you have more visceral fat, then you have more inflammatory cytokines. And it can become a whole thing. This is why obesity, belly, specifically visceral fat obesity, is so correlated with heart disease, which is an inflammatory condition. Next reason why you can be hungry is if you're not eating enough protein. When we consume protein, also when we consume fat, which we'll talk about in a second, but when we consume protein, we release a hormone in our body called cholecystokinin, or CCK. And this hormone tells the gallbladder to release bile, which helps us digest fat, but it also sends a bit of a signal to the brain to tell us we're getting full. So when we consume a meal and we start to get through digesting our protein molecules, when we have a lot of amino acids, we're going to make cholecystokinin, and that's going to make us feel full. So if you have an increased appetite, you can try replacing some carbohydrates with protein. And usually when we increase our protein intake, it will decrease our appetite. So we also have another hormone that makes us feel hungry, and that's called ghrelin. Ghrelin makes your stomach growl, right? So when your stomach is empty, you produce this molecule and it gives you that hungry stomach feeling. So when we consume protein, then we produce this molecule called glucagon-like peptide, and this inhibits that ghrelin hormone. So it decreases our appetite. And just like I said, the next reason is fat intake. We need to consume some healthy fats. We don't want to consume trans fats. We don't want to consume processed food and fast food that is really high in fat without also containing micronutrients, right? So we want to have our essential fatty acids like omega-3 and omega-9 that you would find in olive oil. And we want to consume nuts and fish and eggs and healthy fat sources, because just like consuming protein, we make cholecystokinin that tells the gallbladder to release the bile to digest the fat, and that makes us feel full. Also, fat is digested slowly, so it's kind of like the rate limiting step when we're digesting food, and it makes the whole digestive process last longer, which means that you're more likely to absorb more nutrients from your food, and it will make you feel full for a longer period of time. So if you had a diet of no fat or low fat, you're more likely to have increased hunger. The next reason, fiber intake. Fiber adds bulk to your meal and it slows the digestive process. Fiber is really good for feeding your microbiome organisms, right? So we want to have lots of fruit and vegetables, our leafy greens, the cruciferous, nuts, seeds, whole grains, beans, legumes, those kinds of things are going to have lots of fiber. So we want to consume fiber in our diet. It adds bulk and makes us feel physically full, and it slows the digestive process so that we feel full for longer. Micronutrient levels. So micronutrients are vitamins and minerals. If we're not consuming enough micronutrient dense foods like plants and animals, right? We want to consume whole foods. Then we will get all of the vitamins and minerals that we need. If we are eating processed food and fast food, then we're not getting enough micronutrients. And then our hypothalamus will make us feel hungry because we need those micronutrients to act as cofactors for all of our chemical reactions in our body. So we use B vitamins to make energy. We use B12 to make red blood cells. We use zinc for immune system functions, right? And magnesium for our nervous system and our muscles. So we need to consume enough nutrient dense foods so that we have enough cofactors for chemical reactions. Our gut microbiome can make us hungry. So when we consume a diet that is high in carbohydrates and sugar, for example, we are going to feed the gut microbiome organisms that like sugar and carbohydrates. And so then those organisms are actually going to send signaling molecules to your brain to make you crave sugar and carbohydrates because they want to eat it. So if you have cravings, you can probably partly blame your gut microbiome. So we shift this by shifting our diet to a healthier whole food diet, right? Increasing our plant foods, healthy fats, and staying away from the processed food and the fast food and the sugary stuff. Our mood can affect our appetite. When we consume food, actually, especially carbohydrates, simple carbohydrates like sugars, and complex carbohydrates like starches and potato chips and pasta, when you think of comfort foods, okay? So when we consume starchy, sugary, carbohydrate foods, we actually produce a lot of serotonin. Serotonin is a molecule that we make in our digestive tract. A lot of it is made in our digestive tract. And it goes to our brain and it tells our brain that we feel good. So think about the last time you had a delicious meal, maybe a holiday meal, and you just get that wonderful feeling, right? That's serotonin. That calm and content and wonderful feeling is the serotonin molecule. So sometimes when you have a lot of stress or you feel down or depressed or lonely, when you have those kinds of moods, your brain wants you to have some serotonin, so it'll make you crave those comfort foods. The next reason why we can have an increase in appetite is stress. When we have any kind of physical or emotional stress, or it can actually include pain, injury, if you've had surgery, or if you've had an infection. When you have stress, or if you're too cold or too hot, or all kinds of stressors, then your body is going to produce adrenaline and cortisol and other hormones that are going to try to make you store nutrients so that your body is prepared to have energy to be able to fight whatever situation is stressful. So even when we have emotional stress, our body will still react the same way as if we have physical stress, and it will make you want to store energy. Your immune system can make you hungry. If you're getting sick with a cold or flu, sometimes in those very first couple of days when you don't even really have symptoms yet, you can start to feel hungrier than normal for some unknown reason. And it could be that your immune system is aware that there's a pathogen that is starting to replicate inside of you, and it wants to store energy and nutrients to be able to fight this pathogen. It's common in children. Often kids, when they're going to get sick, a couple of days before they get sick, they're really, really hungry. So if that happens to you, listen to your body, consume food so that you have lots of stored energy for helping your immune system get rid of that pathogen. Sometimes also, if you've heard of the expression starve a fever and feed a cold, your body will know that sometimes it's actually more appropriate to not eat. So sometimes when you're sick, you will have no appetite. And then also listen to your body, because when you don't eat, you actually stimulate this process called autophagy, where your body gets rid of damaged cells or virus-infected cells. So if you're hungry, eat. If you're getting an infection, if you're not hungry, don't eat. Listen to your body. Okay. Inflammation. So this goes along with the immune system, and I've already mentioned it. But when we have an inflammatory reaction, there are these molecules called toll-like receptors that are in our brain that actually, during an inflammatory response, those molecules will signal hunger. So when we have an inflammatory situation, whether it's an acute inflammation like you've injured yourself and you need to heal, or if you have a chronic inflammatory situation going on, then your body wants to have more energy. So your immune system, again, can trigger an appetite when you have an inflammatory response. One way to actually help your body decrease inflammatory situations, because we don't want to have chronic inflammation. It causes all kinds of problems. Two of the molecules that are the most important for helping your immune system to be regulated so that it is stimulated enough to fight pathogens but not overstimulated and causing inflammatory conditions is vitamin D and omega-3 fatty acids. Another reason for being hungry is if we increase our activity level. So let's suppose you decide, you know what, I'm going to go for a run every single day now, and then I'm going to eat the same, but I'm just going to add in this exercise, and I'm going to lose some weight by being more physically active, which is a great idea. But if you increase the amount of exercise too quickly, then your body is going to react by thinking, oh no, we have to do all of this extra work, we better store some extra energy. So you want to build up, if you're adding exercise, you want to add it gradually so that you don't have this overreacting hunger response. Okay, and if you do, join a sports team and you start working out a lot more and you get really hungry, then go with it. Your body needs those nutrients and then it will gradually calm down. Next reason, drinking calories. So this isn't really going to make you hungry, but when you consume calories in liquid form, it doesn't really make you feel full. So if you're consuming smoothies or juices that have calories, you will tend to probably still eat the same amount of food when you have a meal. So be careful with smoothies and juices, and also things like pop and Coke and things like that, because those liquid calories tend to not increase our satiety factor. We can be hungry, or we can feel hungry if we haven't been drinking enough water. So in the hypothalamus, our thirst center is very close to the hunger center, and sometimes when we need to drink a glass of water, we can misinterpret that as being hungry. So if you're trying to lose weight and you feel hungry and you feel like, well, I shouldn't really be hungry right now, just try drinking a big glass of water and see how that helps. It's actually also a good idea about 20 minutes before a meal to have a big glass of water to make sure that you don't have this thirst response. And then when you're eating your food, you don't need to consume a lot of liquids during the meal. And if you eat your meal slowly and you chew it really well, then you will feel full sooner. If you scarf your food back and eat really fast, you're going to end up consuming more calories than you actually need. Another reason, our body likes to anticipate things. So we have a circadian rhythm. We wake up during the day generally and we sleep at night. So when we have these 24-hour circadian cycles, we actually produce different hormones in different amounts at different times of the day. So cortisol increases in the morning, melatonin increases at night. You make growth hormone during deep sleep. Right? And so our body likes to have this routine, and it likes to anticipate what you're going to do, and that includes eating. So when you eat at the same time every day, then your body will start to anticipate that. So let's suppose you have breakfast every day at 11 o'clock in the morning because you're doing a little bit of intermittent fasting, and if you eat every day at 11 a.m., then every day at 11 a.m. you're going to be hungry. Right? Which is not necessarily a bad thing. Your body will get used to it. And then if you did want to do a longer fast, you usually only have to push through that time period for a short period of time. Once your body gets adapted to burning fat, then that hunger won't last very long. So our body anticipates when we're going to eat food, and it starts turning on all of the digestive processes. We can eat more, or we could be triggered to eat more, or to have an appetite if we are doing something social. So when we hang out with people, we tend to eat really good food. We make lots of serotonin and dopamine and oxytocin and all of those really good molecules that make us feel good. So if you know that you're going to a social event where you're probably going to eat a lot of food, you could just skip lunch, and then you can enjoy your evening of a wonderful meal hanging out with friends. Sometimes we eat because we're bored or because it's a habit. So if you always have snacks when you're watching a movie and you do that consistently, then it will become very difficult to watch a movie without snacks, right? So when we have habits, then our brain likes to anticipate things. You turn on Netflix and your brain is like, I know, now we're going to start to have snacks. So a good way to try to get rid of this is to only have snacks intermittently. So if you don't do it all the time, then it doesn't become as much of a habit and your brain won't be as adapted. With artificial sweeteners, this isn't necessarily going to impact appetite as much as potentially sugar cravings. So when you consume sweet things, our taste receptors tells the brain and the pancreas sweet food is on the way, and we will still make insulin. And our brain will still enjoy that sweet taste. And it can continue a sugar craving kind of situation. So even though artificial sweeteners don't technically have any calories, people that eat a lot of artificial sweeteners still tend to end up gaining weight. Another reason for increased appetite is hormone imbalances. We have several different hormones that can impact our appetite. So I already mentioned ghrelin. Ghrelin makes you hungry. Cholecystokinin makes you feel full. Leptin makes you feel full. Glucagon-like peptide can make you feel full. And then we have other hormones like cortisol. The stress hormone can make you feel hungry. We also have thyroid hormones that are involved in metabolism. So weirdly, people that have low thyroid or hypothyroidism or Hashimoto's, which is an autoimmune thyroid situation, when you have low thyroid, you actually eat less and your appetite goes down. But people with low thyroid tend to gain weight. And that's because thyroid is involved in regulating metabolism, regulates burning calories. So when you slow down burning calories, then your overall weight can actually increase even though you're eating less food. So sometimes people say, I'm not eating very much, but I'm still gaining weight, right? That is a real thing. Different people can have different appetites. And it's going to be also based on how many calories you're burning. What's your metabolic rate? There's lots of reasons why you would have a low metabolic rate. Partly if you're sedentary and you don't exercise very much. Also if your thyroid hormones are low. Oh, and then the last hormone that I want to mention is women in menopause. So when you stop making the estrogen in the ovaries when we reach menopause, then it actually has a whole effect on our metabolism and our appetite. And women in menopause can tend to gain weight. One way to combat this is when you do physical exercise, like higher intensity exercise, like at least moderate, then you're going to stimulate the adrenal glands to make a hormone called DHEA, or dehydroepiandrosterone, which is kind of like a testosterone androgen kind of hormone. And this is very important for taking the place, basically, of the loss of estrogen. So one way to combat menopause symptoms and weight gain is by increasing exercise. So then there's some substances like stimulants or depressants. So let's talk about alcohol. Alcohol can affect your appetite. So if people drink periodically, once in a while you have a social situation and you have a few drinks, then the next day you can tend to have an increase in appetite where your body is trying to sort of detoxify the alcohol that you consumed, and that requires energy. So sometimes you overeat the day after drinking in the evening. The opposite side of things is sometimes when people consume alcohol every day for a long period of time, they actually decrease their appetite and they eat less food, and they can become deficient in vitamins and minerals, particularly vitamin B12. And then when you look at stimulants will decrease your appetite. So these are going to be things like coffee and then also ADHD medications. So any kind of a stimulant will decrease your appetite. Oh, and the last kind of medication that I wanted to mention is antidepressants. Often people gain weight gradually over a period of time if they take antidepressants because it stimulates your appetite, and it also can affect your metabolism. So over long periods of time, if you're taking antidepressants and you're just having a lot of trouble getting rid of extra weight, it could be that medication is affecting your whole metabolism. And the last reason why your appetite can be affected is if you quit smoking. So smoking is a stimulant. As I was just saying, stimulants decrease your appetite. So people that are smokers and then they quit, they're losing that stimulant appetite suppressing effect, and then they can have an increase in appetite. So there's ways you can transition by using nicotine melts or gum or patches to, gradually wean off so that you don't have as much of that appetite effect. So there's lots and lots of reasons why your appetite can be affected.